Good morning, kids. Are you ready for the kids' Bible lesson? Woohoo! Hey, Lael and Anna and William and Emma. Today we're going to do a story about Daniel. Now, Daniel was friends with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the guys who had been thrown into that fiery furnace that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Daniel was one of their friends, and he loved God. Now the king, this is King Darius, who was from a group called the Medes and the Persians, he had conquered Babylon, and he decided he wanted to put Daniel in charge of lots of things because Daniel was super smart and really knew what to do when it was the right thing to do. Now these three were also in charge of the kingdom. But King Darius had made Daniel in charge of even them, and they did not like that. So they thought, how can we find something wrong with Daniel? And they tried really hard, and they couldn't find anything wrong with him. They finally decided, you know what? The only way we're going to find anything wrong with him has to do with his God and the law of his God. So these three guys came to King Darius and said, Darius, we want you to make a law that says nobody's allowed to pray or ask anybody for anything except for you. They can't talk to their God or anything like that. And we were wondering if you want to make it into a law. So they made the law that said no praying, and Darius signed it. And it became a law. And the laws of the Medes and the Persians said even if the king changed his mind, nobody could change that law. Now Daniel knew what the law said, but he still loved his God so much that he wanted to still keep praying to God. Daniel would pray to God 3 times every day. And so, like normal, he went into his room, and it was like up on the roof, in this room that had a window, and the window looked out towards Jerusalem. And he went there, and he got down and he prayed. And while Daniel was praying, those other guys who were rulers in the kingdom, they came by and they looked into the window and they saw Daniel praying. And they said, aha, we got him. They went to King Darius and said, King Darius, you know that law that you made? Well, we saw that somebody is not following that law. Daniel was bowing down to his God and praying. We saw him do it. King Darius was very distressed. He was like, oh no, I got to see if I can figure out how to make it so Daniel doesn't have to go into the lion's den, because that's what the law said. If you disobeyed it, you would be thrown into the den of lions. So the king worked all day until it came to night, trying to figure out how to get it so Daniel wouldn't have to go into the den of lions. Then the other leaders came to the king and said, oh, king, you know what you have to do. You have to throw him into the lion's den. I know. I'll go get him. Now, King Darius really did not want to have to throw Daniel into the lion's den, but he couldn't break the law, and so Daniel had to go in. The king said to Daniel, Daniel, the God who you serve will save you from the lions. So Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. So they rolled a stone over the pit so no one could open it. And Daniel was stuck there all night long. All night the king waited. He didn't sleep and he didn't eat. He was so worried about Daniel. As soon as the sun came up, he ran down to the lion's den. Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, has the God whom you serve constantly been able to save you from the lions? Daniel answered, yep, God sent an angel to shut the mouths of the lions, and they have not hurt me at all. So Daniel was pulled up out of the lion's den. The king was so happy that Daniel had been saved, and he made a decree that said everybody in the whole kingdom was to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. And then he threw the guys into the lion's den that had tried to trap Daniel. And then he praised Daniel's God and said he's the best God ever. Now, Daniel lived a long time ago. He lived longer ago than your parents before they were born, even before your grandparents were born,
even before Abraham Lincoln was born. He lived even before Jesus was born. He lived a long time ago, but do you know that he worshiped and prayed to the same God that you and I do? Now, there are a couple of things that are really important about this story. One of them is that Daniel really did trust the true and living God. Do you? He prayed and talked to God 3 times every day, when it wasn't against the law and when it was against the law. He loved the true and living God. The second thing that's really interesting about this story is that Daniel didn't go inside his room and close the window and pray. He knew that these guys were trying to catch him in following the true and living God. And he wanted others to know, I love God. No matter what laws are made, I will always talk to God. Will you talk to God no matter what?
Okay, kids, see you next week.